My name is Andrea Carmen from the Yaqui Nation. I'm the Executive Director of the International Indian Treaty Council, and we've been participating in this process all the way back since 1992 in the Earth Summit, when the first global action on climate change was addressed and recognized as a need. And certainly the situation has become more and more critical every year since then, till we find ourselves now at a real tipping point. And one of the problems has always been that what we consider to be a false solution, market-based trading of carbon and carbon offsets, is part of the Paris Agreement and found its way in there. Of course, many of the states and many corporations are strongly in favor, because what it does is allows polluters to trade credits with projects they might fund, say in the Global South, to protect forests, so that they can continue with projects that create greenhouse gases and emissions. So it's a problem because, and called a false solution by many indigenous peoples, because it doesn't really reduce the total amount of greenhouse gases in the global environment. But it also is a threat to the rights of indigenous peoples. Without rights safeguards for these kind of schemes, indigenous peoples in the north, or in places where mining is taking place or deforestation, basically have no protection in the convention to the destruction of our homelands, because these same companies and governments can trade credits to protect forests, or even do non-sustainable projects like agriculture instead of rainforests in other countries. So there's no protection for the rights of indigenous peoples also in those southern forested areas that don't want to be part of a carbon trading scheme, which is offensive not only environmentally but also culturally and spiritually to many indigenous peoples. It's putting a price tag on carbon, on the ability of forests to help us to survive climate change. So there's a lot of problems in it for indigenous peoples, and it's always been our position that what was reflected in the preamble of the Paris Agreement, that all of the solutions and all of the programs carried out to address climate change take into consideration human rights and the rights of indigenous peoples. So we're feeling that this is inconsistent with how Article 6 is being negotiated here, because the human rights safeguards that would protect us and implement and uphold rights like free prior informed consent, for example, are still bracketed, and there's a lot of pushback from some states that really see this as a lucrative source of income for themselves while they continue to pollute and emit greenhouse gases that are killing us all, basically. So I want to introduce Ghazali Ohorela. He is one of our indigenous caucus experts who has been following this discussion, which will be decided here in Spain, in Madrid, Spain, at COP25. It's one of the last articles to be negotiated in what's called the Paris Rule Book, which talks about how the Paris Agreement is going to be implemented. And there's a lot of concern among indigenous peoples that while we have secured a rights-based approach, say in the development of the local communities indigenous peoples platform, we hope our work plan will be adopted. I'm a member from North America of the facilitative working group for that new UN body. There's a lot of strong rights languages there. But while we're focusing on that, this major threat to indigenous peoples' rights could slide through without any safeguards whatsoever. So this is a major focus of the Indigenous Caucus here, And we have, like I said, some Indigenous experts from our own caucus that have been following this issue very carefully, and Ghazali is one of those, and he can maybe go into more depth about the exact wording that we're looking for, and also the impacts that will happen to Indigenous peoples if these rights are not secured and safeguarded in the adoption of this article. So thank you, and Ghazali, could you come in the frame? I will step out. Thank you everyone for your interest, and we're in solidarity with everyone who's doing work from the local tribal community level, on the national level, and everywhere in the international arena. This is a crisis, all hands on deck. We all have to be involved. So we really appreciate your interest for what we're doing here, and we hope to hear from everybody about how we can work together to strengthen our Indigenous movement to address the climate crisis on all levels. Thank you.